Alrighty, so yesterday I looked at how the Philadelphia Union, the Eastern Conference champion, made it to MLS Cup. Today, we're going to look at LAFC and the Western Conference champion of how they made it to MLS Cup. And what's interesting about this season for LAFC is that it's very similar to the season that they had in 2019, which it's no coincidence that both of those years they won the Supporters Show, where, LAFC, they were definitely head and shoulder above everybody. They had a pretty good run in the first half and even into the second half of the season. But as the season was getting into around the last month or two, that's when they kind of started to struggle, and that's when question was started to ask, like, well, what's going on with LAFC? Can they, of course, get it going again to get some momentum heading into the playoffs? And the answer is yes. They did exactly that. Although, unlike what we saw in 2019, where they can't get the job done, they were able to do it this time, and now they have the rights in terms of not only appearing for their first ever MLS Cup, but hosting their first ever MLS Cup against the Philadelphia Union. Now, this season, they finished with a 21-4-9 record and have 67 points. They scored 66 goals, which is the best in the Western Conference, but not by a lot. I mean, for a while, it looked like Austin was going to finish the season with the top goal-scoring record, but LAFC just beat them by one goal this season. They did give up 38 goals, but with a goal differential of plus 28. And as I mentioned, they finished first in the Western Conference. By the way, the 38 goals that they conceded, I think only Dallas are the one that has a better goal allowed records in the Western Conference. And let's not forget that they once again won the Supporters Shield. And unlike what I talked about before about the Supporters Shield curse and that it feels like it's kind of bitten the past couple of Supporters Shield winner, that's not the case for LAFC. They're trying to do something that only TFC and I believe the Galaxy did it back in the early 2010s, which is win the Supporters Shield and also win MLS Cup. Now, the beginning of the season, they won 3-0 against the Colorado Rapids. That was the Carlos Vela game because he scored a hat-trick, and that was kind of the game that we thought, knowing the fact that Carlos Vela are saying that this maybe could be his last season with LAFC. He's going to leave it all out, and after that hat-trick kind of performance, you can definitely tell that he was definitely leaving things out, and that it looks like he was going to have a monster season, which in the end he kind of did. But this was a season, like I mentioned before, it wasn't really just Carlos Vela in this. It was a combination of effort, especially on the attacking end as the season goes along. But they did fall by a 1-1 draw against the Portland Timbers at home. But they did win 2-0 on the road against Inter Miami, a 3-1 win against the Vancouver Whitecaps, and then won 4-2 on the road against Orlando City. So just like the Union, got off to a strong start to the season. But unlike the Union, they didn't actually kind of fade it away and started to have problem as what we talked about in that video. But they did lose the El Tráfico against the Galaxy because, of course, when it comes to El Tráfico and when it's played at Dignity Health Sports Park, that is a place that I believe LAFC have yet to win. Like, I know LAFC have won a couple of El Tráfico, but I don't think they have actually beaten the Galaxy at Dignity Health Sports Park, and this was an example of that, losing 2-1 in that one against the Galaxy. But they quickly rebounded by winning 3-1 against Sporting KC, and then in the U.S. Open Cup, unlike the Union getting eliminated in the first U.S. Open Cup game, they did have a relatively easier game. And by the way, OC is not stand for Orlando City, as some of you probably thinking, wait a minute, didn't the Union lose to Orlando City? Why did you put OC? That stands for Orange County. So yeah, the LAFC won that one and won it pretty convincingly, 5-1 over Orange County. The next game, they won 2-1 against FC Cincinnati on the road before winning 2-0 against Minnesota. And as I mentioned, in the only matchup between both of these teams that is going to be an MLS Cup matchup tomorrow, or actually not tomorrow, but on Saturday. Tomorrow I'll do the preview in terms of MLS Cup 2022. But it was an entertaining 2-2 draw in a game that, like I said, back in May, I said that I was hoping maybe this is going to be an MLS Cup matchup, and we indeed would get it on Saturday. But back then I was hoping because it was just such an entertaining kind of game. But then after that, they were able to move on into the round of 16 of the U.S. Open Cup by winning 2-0 against the Portland Timbers. But they did lose 2-0 to the Colorado Rapids, and did lose 2-1 to Austin FC, and this is kind of when LAFC was kind of going through a little bit of a mini blip, but they and that kind of continued with them losing 3-1 to the Galaxy in El Tráfico, but that quickly all changed because starting on May 28th, they won 3-2 against the San Jose Earthquakes. They did drew 1-1 against the Sounders on the road, but then they won 2-0 against the Red Bulls, won 3-1 against FC Dallas, and then heading into the calendar month of July, they did lose 1-0 to the Vancouver Whitecaps because it's kind of given that LAFC, for whatever reason, when they play against the Whitecaps on the road, they tend to have a hard time, and this was another example of it. But little do we know that was beginning of when LAFC not only started to get themselves back on track, but they started to kind of steamroll the league in terms of getting wins after wins, because after that game when they play El Tráfico against the Galaxy, they got their revenge by winning 3-2 against the Galaxy. Then they won 2-1 on the road against Nashville, won 2-0 against Sporting KC, won 2-1 against the Seattle Sounders, and then won 4-1 against RSL before winning 5-0 in the hands of Charlotte FC. They absolutely destroyed Charlotte in that one, and then they were able to win 1-0 against DC United, and up to that point, that was 7 games in a row that LAFC have won. Like this is also when I think during I believe this was after the Charlotte video, I was started to make a video talk about, well, is this team going to be that team that maybe get 80 points? Because I think I made that video back in 2019 and it didn't go so well, and that I once again made well, actually I didn't make that video back in 2019. What I think I was saying is that I think a lot of media was saying that, well, LAFC not only can break the points total record, but they might actually get 80 plus points and become the first team to do so. And again, we were having the same discussion too. And this is also around the point when they started to get some of the big name player in. During the winning streak, they were getting some big name player like Gareth Bale and also Chiellini, and then of course they got Bouanga not long after, and that. Yeah, this was an LAFC team that was an absolute force, and that, again, a lot of people were saying that they're going to potentially get 80 points. I even made a video talking about that too, but little do we know that, yeah, not only the fact that they didn't get 80 points, but they didn't came close to it, because this is when they kind of had that same issue that they had in 2019, where as the month winds down the season, and really just with like 2 months left in the season, they started to struggle, because it kind of all started with them losing 2-1 to the San Jose Earthquakes. And again, in that game when the Quakes play against LAFC, where LAFC won 7 in a row, if you would have told me the Quakes were going to be the one that ends the winning streak, I would say that is, yeah, that's kind of funny. I mean, I know the Quakes this season have been doing well at home, but still, this is LAFC. Now, another thing I will say about that game that LAFC plays is that they started relatively a weak kind of squad, but even then, that was also kind of maybe a game that LAFC and Steve Cherundolo said that, well, we're just so dominant that even when we put our B team in it, we're still gonna get wins, right? And it turns out that of course is not the case, and this is just another example that even some of the best team in the league, if you decided to be maybe a little bit kind of overconfident and maybe kind of get into that arrogant level, yeah, you're going to be punished. And the Quakes able to do that, getting a 2-1 win against LAFC. And again, I would have never thought that they were the team that break LAFC winning streak. But then in the very next game when they play against Austin FC, a game that maybe people thought that it was a preview of the Western Conference Final, and it turns out that of course is the case. But certainly that was a game where Austin absolutely destroyed LAFC, and I talked about in the game or in the video where the Union of course had their worst game against Charlotte FC. LAFC had their worst game against Austin FC. Like, they were getting absolutely ripped apart by Los Verdes in this game, and things got even worse, because in the very next game they would lose 2-1 to the Houston Dynamo. Yes, this was a Dynamo team that was dead last, and yes, I understand that was a game where LAFC was very unlucky, and that that was just kind of one of those FIFA kind of ultimate team kind of game where you dominate the opposition, but you can't finish, and then somehow the opposition with minimum shots able to win it, and that was also kind of the point where we not only once again question LAFC of why are they in this slump all of a sudden, but also question that they had the same issue that they had back in in 2021, where this is a team that at times they were the better team against their opposition by a country mile, but the problem is they couldn't finish, and because they couldn't finish and they get sucker punched time after time, it looked like we were in for the same situation, and hence that was one of the reasons why that LAFC team did not make it to the playoffs, shockingly. But the good news is they did bounce back with a 2-0 victory against RSL, but that turns out to be the only wins that they had in the next 2 games, because in the next game they lost 2-1 against FC Dallas, and that I believe is the only game where they were leading, or they were getting I think up to that point they were like a perfect record in terms of scoring first, and they have never lost when they score first. That all changed in that game against FC Dallas, losing 2-1 in that one, and then drawing 1-1 against Minnesota in a game where the Loons probably should have won that one if it wasn't for Carlos Vela scoring an absolute golazo, and that, yeah, things were looking down for LAFC. I mean, 1 win in the last 5 games, and now we're heading into just the last couple of games of the season. You just wonder, like, is this team even considered to be an MLS Cup contender, and are we seeing an LAFC team when the pressure started to get to them, they of course crumple it? Well, it turns out that was not the case, because they won 3-1 against the Houston Dynamo, then winning 2-1 against the Portland Timbers to support the Supporters Shield. Now, they did lose 1-0 against Nashville, but similar to the game against Houston, they were by far the better team, and that Joe Willis, that was kind of the only guy that is the reason why LAFC didn't score a goal in that one. Like, if you talk about a game where the goalkeeper single-handedly stole all 3 points for their team, that was a great example of it, because Joe Willis was just unbelievable in that game. Like, he single-handedly got 3 points for Nashville. Though, that being said, that game didn't really matter in the end, because LAFC already won the Supporters Show, and it was kind of a meaningless kind of game. It just kind of maybe did end in a little bit disappointment that they did lose that game while they were about to celebrate the Supporters Shield win. Again, it's kind of weird that you of course celebrate the Supporters Shield win, and then you of course lose that coming off of a loss. But nevertheless, we head into the playoffs, and again, this is where the measuring stick begins, because, you know, heading into the playoffs, this is where LAFC needs to prevail and need to perform when they have failed to do so in the past. Well, the good news is they did this time, because in the first game, just like I talked about the Union playing against a team that is going to be tough to play and are very familiar with them, that's the same case for LAFC. They had to play against their inter-city rival, the Galaxy, but just like 2019, they were able to beat them and outlast them at home. And then in the next match against Austin FC, that was probably one of the most one-sided and probably the most dominant playoff game or a conference final game I have seen in a very long time. Like, LAFC not only won that game against Austin, but they basically gave Austin a taste of their own medicine back in August. Like, remember how Austin dominated LAFC? It was like a reverse. Like, it almost felt like LAFC played a reverse Uno card to Austin face, and yeah, that was just a total domination by LAFC. And I get it. Yes, I know Austin fans will once again talk about that call that kind of gone against them, and you know, in some way we'll never know if Austin did get that call and got a penalty and make it 2-1. Maybe things would be different, but when you look on papers and on the stats and just overall, if you don't look at that controversial penalty kick call, LAFC absolutely deserved to move on into the MLS Cup final. And that was kind of a game where we saw when LAFC is at its best, because I've said it before and I'll say it again, when LAFC is at its best, nobody can stop this team, and we'll see whether they can do so in the game against the Philadelphia Union. And as I also mentioned earlier in this video, I'll be doing the preview of MLS Cup 2022 tomorrow, and it's going to be an extended preview, of course, talk about the stats and also how they got to MLS Cup in terms of the playoffs, and also some of the key points and some of the tactical standpoints coming into MLS Cup 2022. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this video? And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.